Welcome back, everyone. After a crazy Game 2, we are moving on with the group. It doesn't stop there just because it was too crazy. We do have 3 more matches to find out who's going to move on to the round of 16. But right this match, what happens is one person, their road to the WCS Premier League Finals stops right here. They will get eliminated in the round of 32. It is between Aiguz and Masa. And, I mean, you guys are agreeing here.
I can't stop smiling.
I know. Everyone's still thinking about that last game. And we'll have to save that emotion until match number 4 when Haas gets to play again against Marine Lord. I'm sure we'll see plenty more crazy stuff in that one. But for now, let's talk briefly, because we didn't have too much of a chance, because Haas threw everyone for a loop, about Aiguz. I mean, he still came into play, and he held off pretty well in Game 1. And it seemed like every time he knew, he seemed very well prepared for what he was going up against.
And I feel like these two players are very evenly matched. We kind of go into it and we say, like, Marine Lord's a favorite. He should make it out. And then Haas is, like, the crazy guy. I feel like these players are the same styles. They're, very similar. And just skill-wise, they're equal, in my opinion.
Yeah, Rotterdam, do you think at any point also maybe Aiguz, as long as he's not completely thrown for a curveball here by Haas, has a little bit of an advantage because he saw Masa trying something a little bit different in Game 1 against Marine Lord. He's seen that Masa is willing to maybe switch it up a little bit in his TVTs, whereas Aiguz didn't really have to show anything to anyone in this group just yet.
True, I do think he has a little bit of an advantage, but not necessarily because of that first series of the day, because I think Aiguz's playstyle is pretty different than the one of Marine Lord, so it kind of doesn't really matter how you play against a certain person, even when it's the same matchup, because even within the same matchup, there are so many different styles. But, going at the past, they were in the same group in Season 2. Back then, Aiguz did advance. I think that is a big advantage, knowing, like, I've defeated this guy before when it truly mattered. And I think overall, Aiguz has been slightly more successful within the WCS system than Masa has. And I think that should give him some confidence going into the series.
Yeah, so let's talk about the styles that you just mentioned. Of course, Marine Lord showed us, a lot of people are saying, all right, well, Marine Lord showed up to play. He, played with his mechs. He played very well, very patiently with his tanks. He just waited until he had that kind of core force going forward. What are we looking at here for Aiguz? Because we haven't seen his TVT just yet.
I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah. So I personally think that this is going to be a series where both players will try to adapt to each other a little bit. They're trying to outsmart each other within the game, while Marine Lord's style is truly a style that's just practice. Like, I'm going to do my thing. I absolutely do not care how you open. I don't care about your mid-phase game. I'll do my thing. I'll stabilize on my 3 bases. And as soon as I have 160, 170 supply, I'll start attacking. And anything up to that point, whatever you do, that's up to you. I really don't care. I'm still going to go for this composition. But I think in this series, they will try to outsmart each other a little bit. They'll try, some more cheeky moves. And I think both players will have more opportunities to make the difference within the game as well, because they will be out there. And the moment you go out on the map, obviously, you leave yourself a little bit vulnerable as well. While Marine Lord's style is just, I'm just going to sit here. If you want to do something about it, good luck, have fun. But it should be invincible up to a certain point.
Aiguz giving us a nice smile. He looks like he's like, all right, whatever. I mean, the previous match I played, I knew what I was going into. I lost. That's fine. I still got more chances here in Group D of the Premier League of round of 32.
Kind of looked like the mana stare for a little bit. He was just staring into the distance. I'm just really interested to see whether Aiguz does go for that quick-paced bio or he goes for that tortoise-style mech play. We did see Masa go for that quick bio style. And I don't know if he can actually change it up. I don't know if he can play both styles or not. But we'll see soon.
Yeah, I mean, this will be the test for both players because, yeah, at the same time, maybe you still don't want to show too much because you never know if Haas is going to throw even Marine Lord for a loop there in the winner's match. But at the same time, I mean, if you lose here, it's it. If you've prepared anything or if you know that you have secured a style to make sure that you can maybe go into that late game with the mech, start things off really stably, you want to show that you're up for that against even Marine Lord by surviving in this match against each other. This is the loser's match, the elimination match, rather, of Group D. And kicking things off with Terraform, Cactus Valley and Coda still being left up as that last map.
Yeah, very standard map pool over here. I'd say 3 very straightforward TVT maps. I truly think that both players have confidence going into this series. I think it's going to be 2-1 either way. And I also think... where was I going with this? Either way, it doesn't matter. I think it's going to be a great series. And I think both players truly believe that, they can take it.
Yeah, so first map will be Terraform.
And it's going to be interesting on top of that just because both players are teammates. So they have practiced together quite a bit, and hopefully that'll come into it. And like you said, those mind games will be a little bit more complicated.
All right, well, we'll see what they have prepared for each other against, kind of fighting to survive here in the WCS Premier League. It's going to be Masa versus Aiguz for the elimination match. And to bring you this game over on the commentator desk, it will be Nate Manning control.
We have an elimination match for Root Gaming on our hands. 2 players competing, but for those of you Root fans, another team kill, and, well, another Root player guaranteed to be eliminated here in the WCS.
That's part of the problem when you put the most players from a team into the WCS. Oftentimes they will collide because it's just a numbers game. Just like yesterday, Nathanius, you knew a TVT was going to happen today. You knew it was virtually impossible for it to not happen.
Well, I mean, sometimes I like to think that I'm also a wizard in control.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we're going to start off on Terraform, as you guys can see. Our first player in the Northwest, the Blue Terran from Root Gaming. He's from Canada. He's Masa.
All Harvesters staying in the base for right now.
I did like your comment about giving him like the shocks, like just by going for some sort of weird cheese and, you know, making him think it's happening again. Of course, we have in the bottom right the man who just got knocked down here by Haas. He is Iagas from Australia, also from Root Gaming.
Yeah. They've all spent some time at that Root Gaming house in California. Masa, a little bit more of a mysterious figure. You know, he plays a lot of StarCraft. He practices for sure, but he'll kind of ebb and flow in and out of the game. He'll take periods of time where he's just kind of doing other things. He's a young man, a young, handsome Canadian man who's got other things to do as well. So he's a little bit more mysterious. Not quite, you know, like the staple. Like Iagas is a big Australian figurehead at this point in time. He's kind of their Terran player. He's the guy that has gone off to some of these international tournaments, including WCS in the past, and done fairly well for himself. He's been very successful lately.
I like that you mentioned that because he's also the Terran player from Australia.
That's true.
Australia, the whole Southeast Asia scene has pretty much exclusively been Zergs. You know, you look at who's been coming up out of there. Patreus, Zerg. You know, Pig, Zerg. Moonglade, and, you know, once upon a time, Zerg. Even the last guy that qualified for the first time last season, NXZ, Zerg. Like,
you can't really blame him, though, because if you lived in Australia and all you saw was Zerg-like creatures all the time as well, you would end up playing that race, too.
It's like, well, these look like those things that want to kill me every day. I might as well be these.
Spiders the size of dinner plates and whatnot. But TVT-wise, this is the first, of course, we're going to see of Iagas in this matchup, and you guys are in luck. Nathanius is not just a Terran player himself, but a Terran historian and connoisseur, I would say. You sampled the different styles as a full-time caster, so you'll be able to guide us through this quite well. Tell me, was I accurate in saying Iagas is more of a bio player TVT, or have you seen some different stuff from him?
I do expect bio out of both players this map. This map is really good for, it feels weird to say for TVT, but it's almost like overgrowth in a couple of ways. Like, there's no ramp into the natural, so the straight-up siege tank vision, you don't need high ground vision to hit the opposing base, but you also can siege up outside the natural. You can just go to the side, and you can hit the natural mineral line from this outer area. It makes drops really good. It's just it's a very scrappy map, because you can also siege the main from that cliff that the Reaper would go up later on.
And, you know, we saw that definitely. That was something, it was kind of interesting, actually, and I'd love to hear what you think about this, but, like, Masa played the bio style, but it wasn't quite the barn burner torch, just like running around with your head on fire trying to do what you can. It was more like run to aggressive positions, set up a siege, and then try to actually play that position game, which is typically something the mech players try to do with those tanks, Thors, Vikings, and of course we saw actually Hellbat drops. It's not quite as fast, but it hits a lot harder and wants those positions to do a lot more damage. So it was kind of interesting seeing Masa play the faster style towards the objective that the mech style seems to be better at achieving.
Yeah, it all comes down, I guess, to like trying to use the maps. It seemed like Masa really tried to use the maps against Marine Lord, but you know, Marine Lord's just played so many games. I guess in his head he's like, yeah, this is a place everyone tries to push. So Masa played well, but didn't really seem to mix it up enough. And we already see him opening up with quite a few Hellions this game, trying to establish some early map presence. And with how few Marines there are, he could actually try to just push over Iagas in this early game.
Iagas does jump a little bit too far forward. He wasn't expecting there to be some fighting going on here. He's got a decent hand of Marines back here, and he spreads them out a little bit. Actually, to be honest with you, not too much of a spread there. And now that AoE damage coming from this Hellions is doing quite a bit.
No losses from Masa. There we go. First Hellion getting taken down, but those Hellions are what's key here because all he's doing are building these slow Marines one by one, and now he's like, whoops, I'm just going to lift off. And this Widowmine is basically like the only thing that he has that could potentially, I think it could actually kill all three of those Hellions.
And I like this from Masa, by the way. Like he by all rights kills that army, sees nothing else coming out. But instead of getting greedy and pushing into the high ground where with these low health Hellions, he could very quickly lose a couple to a Marine or two, or even just another Hellion, in this case a Widowmine. Well, he didn't know that, but yeah, the point is he knew that he was probably going to lose a couple key components, and instead of, you know, trying to push too far, he actually just said, okay, I won that day, I'm going to go back home with my minor victory.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart move to come back because now, you know, it's like, okay, obviously he's building stuff, so now he has more Hellions, but instead of losing them, he can kind of snowball even harder from this position. Go back to the natural, be like, okay, well, maybe your bunker's not ready yet. And seeing this mine, I mean, there's some cool stuff you can do. You know, like the Widow Mine drive-by where you just bait the shot onto the Marines. Yeah, just run it ahead. Boom, try to pull it in. Doesn't get much, but there's not that much here to fight.
Yeah, and he's going to go over, and he's actually kind of winning the day again with this fight. Runs up into the base, and with 4 Hellions, he has more than enough to actually torch up that mineral line. Already ahead a couple Harvesters. He's going to start going to town here, and a couple more do die as well. Marines and the Viking in the background trying to do what they can to thin out the force of these Hellions. And they're getting a couple more connections here.
He's getting a lot of work done. You know, you pick it off a few SCVs here and there. Well, those SCVs were on a journey. But
they want in on the action, man.
Yeah, I guess, you know.
Pull the boys. Just the 3 of them, and just the boys, literally.
Yeah, but the thing is, he also killed a lot of those Marines. So even though it's like, oh, Aigis didn't lose that many workers, but not only is he behind on the worker count, he's now in this awkward spot where he doesn't have a lot of forces. So Mas is actually going to go mech this game. But even though his attack is done, Aigis can't do anything back. He doesn't have any units.
Exactly. And kind of notice this too. It's Masa getting scanned, and that's because he's taken the initiative, and he's been on Aigis' side of the map. He's been the one who's been doing the aggression, and through that aggression, scouting out, okay, here's your tech path. I know approximately what your economy's like. Aigis is the guy that doesn't know, and the worst part about TVT is when you're not in the know, you either take a gamble and just say, well, I don't know. I'm going to use all my energy on mules because I'm behind. Or you play it a little bit safer like Aigis did, and he's actually done like 2 or even 3 scans, I believe it is. That's why there's missile turrets up. You saw the tech labs on the starport, or tech labs, excuse me. It ended up being a Raven. So at this point in time, Aigis, he's chasing ghosts.
Yeah, that's the
not
biggest...
Not literally, though. They're not out.
Yeah, the biggest... not literally going for ghosts.
Right.
But your point is still very good. Not knowing what's happening because he's been just being buffeted back so much in this early game, he suddenly at some point sits back, he's like, wait, I don't actually know if he's still building Hellions or if it's going to be something else. And it will be, you know, this mech style. So Masa's like, well, worked pretty well for Marine Lord. Maybe I need to just slow things down versus Aigis since I know he likes to play bio.
So we can say objectively that Aigis is behind. I mean, Nathanius, what are some of the ways that a Terran, and again, given this tech path, we can see he is going bio. It's going to be Marine Marauder with some tank support there, a little bit more of the faster style. How does he get back into this game?
I mean, he's building medevacs right now, or like he's building like a medevac. I feel like he needs to constantly crank out Vikings. You got to take air control and use tank positioning. This map
Vikings
has so
before
many
medevacs, do you think, then?
Yeah. This map has so many of those positions where there's these like unpathable areas, like by these rocks, for example, that we're seeing by these Hellions. You put tanks on one side, you can't get on the other. And that all comes down to the range and the positioning, much more so on this map than most of the others, to be honest. Like Iron Fortress is so open, okay, you don't need that many tanks, you just kind of run around and surround them. You're going to have a really hard time surrounding your opponent on Terraform.
Okay, so we'll have to see if Aigis is going to try to opt for that strategy. We do see some Vikings coming out here. Both players have had that Raven, by the way. The Raven very strong in the TVT matchup. It has the ability to drop down point defense drones, which can nullify a lot of the damage going between, in particular, in a Viking versus Viking battle. We saw that to great effect in our first TVT of the day, and we're going to see it here as well. Aigis is pushing all the way across. He's not expanding behind this. Keep note of that. There's no orbital command or command center that I can see, which means with this third already established, it's kind of down to this.
Yeah, he has a big opportunity to push in. The tanks are spread out. The Hellions are going to turn into Hellbats, though, so they're a little bit tankier. He also lands the Vikings. One important thing to note is, well, actually, these Hellions are going to go for a run-by. Oh, boy.
And this is the right place to do this. The economy is already much, much smaller, and to do this pretty much seals the deal. A lot of Hellions going down here in the blue flame of Mas's Hellions, and he gets a massive shot there, killing so many. It's 34 workers to 65. Aigis caught a glimpse of that third. He came all the way home to try to defend against those 4 Hellions. Nathanius, he looks like he's chasing his tail a little bit. Like I feel like he's in so much trouble.
Mas is just kind of slapping him around this game in control from the very beginning with that early Hellion play. Now he's got the Viking count, and I wanted to say that he was in an okay position before because the Marauders will also help burn out the enemy PDD. But at this point, like he's going to get into this fight, and he just can't actually engage this because the tank count is getting to really high numbers.
Yeah, and even now the Viking count it's still in favor of Aigis. Don't get me wrong, but with both the players expelling their PDDs there, and the economy of Masa just dwarfing that of our Red Terran, it means that lead is going to fastly go away.
Yeah, and he still has these medevacs with the Hellbats inside of him. So this army's going to push in for Aigas, trying to make something happen. The tanks are still shelling away in the back. The tanks are just spread so well. As he pushes further into this, he actually becomes more exposed to all the other siege tanks, but he's going to try to crack it open. Some of the SCVs being pulled to repair for Masa, and he's actually starting to make a little bit of headway because of how spread out this bio actually was.
A lot of red health units, though, for Aigas. It looks like he's got to do it right now. You can see a rally across the map, a little trickle of units. He does get inside the natural. He's actually abandoned going after the third. He's got his eyes on a bigger prize. If he can get up that ramp of the units and get on top of production, he'll be in a good spot. But no, there's just two. Oh, actually, okay, the 2 tanks went up there. I was just going to say, if he was missing those 2 tanks, maybe not. But he is up here. And keep in mind, there are reinforcements coming in. Yeah,
that lift up was crucial. He's going to land his Viking, lands these Hellbats. And, you know, this is... He's trying to make something of this, but this is where the only big advantage of Bio comes into play, is that really fast reinforcement capability. If Masa can stabilize, he's still in a good position, but he's lost so many workers now that Aigas is he's bringing this game back to parity.
They are equal in Harvesters. Of course, the advantage of having mules off that third orbital is a big deal, so I still think Aigas has to do it right now. Trying to target the tank. He doesn't get there, and he has to turn tail and run. Notice his lack of medevacs. The few Vikings of Masa did end up clearing the skies, which means that now his medevacs are safe to drop Hellbats on top of the Bioforce, and he is not in danger of losing control of air battle right now. And Aigas is going back home, and this is kind of like the RTS white flag in many ways. When you do an all-out aggression like that, then you go home and you're like, oh gosh, SCVs in an orbital. It's like you've on some level kind of given up. I mean, he's not given up on the game necessarily, but you're in Plan B.
Yeah, it's as nice as it was for him to do what he did. We look at the worker count again, and then we remember, nice despite that medevac getting picked off, we still have to keep in mind that that third commander has been done for so long for Masa that he can very easily replace those workers and just mule up back to a very fun place economically.
Well, they were equal, and he's already up 11. And in a mirror matchup, 11 is almost an entire base. Like 16 is the saturation point for low saturation. The advantage for Aigas here, if there is one.
Oh boy.
I don't know if I would call it an advantage, but his utility is that he's going bio. Oh, he's going to try to drop on this anyways. He does get past the missile turrets. It's just going to be costly is my problem with this. Like, he's going to kill... He's not even going to focus on the missile turrets themselves.
I love the counter drop. Using the fact that the medevacs get killed off by the missile turrets, he can just kill these Marauders with Hellbats.
Oh, the Wallen. You cheeky, cheeky man, Masa.
It's actually adorable.
Trying to contain them, and he does just long enough. And actually, a lot of these Marauders do die. There's 2 that are going to kind of escape, try to kite backwards. Big Bioforce, though. Maybe this won some positioning. We'll have to take a look. And it looks like no. He scans, and he's like, no, I can't do it.
Yeah, that's a really important thing to know, because he's like, maybe I can pull him out of position. If he moved everything at once, I could just kill the third. And he's like, no. Maybe this is WCS Premier League, okay?
These are good players.
Yeah, I'm not going to be pulled out of my entire base like that.
Yeah. There's like a little bit of a pain in my stomach, because I was like, I've done that before. that's why these guys are playing for as much as $6,000 should they get past this stage. Of course, the WCS points are really nice as well. But I guess down 20 supply now. Harvester count, not quite as... I mean, it's actually kind of... Both players have slowed down in that regard. They have access to triple mule at this point in time. So the focus is on the army. But I do like to say, with that point we're talking about not dislodging the entire army, Mass is slowing it down. He's building missile turrets. We're going to see some sensor towers fairly soon. He already has one at the third, I'm sure. Actually, there is one. And with these tanks, of course, he has a lot more coverage. Now, the other thing about Terraform, too, he has access to like 5 bases within very close proximity to his rally.
Yes, that's a really important thing to know. Like, as these medevacs are kind of like sharking around the north side, he's considering it. He's like, do I try? How many more missile turrets could he have built?
If he had PDD, maybe, but...
Yeah. It's risky.
Not so much.
It's very risky.
We've seen it. It's terrible. It's so bad. Oh.
Wow.
The
2 ships passing in the net.
Dude, the bushes in Terraform. So, guys, Masa can't see that at all, by the way. Like, it's outside the vision of his units, but even if he didn't have air units walking by that, you just don't see it. But here we go. Masa's going to pull in. He's like, your army is not here. Should I be concerned? I don't know. I'm going to attack anyways. Thor getting dropped in as well. And these tanks are in such a tough position. Aigas is going to make the choice to come back, and this is going to be a costly battle for him.
Oh, yeah. Running into all these siege tanks is going to be a bloody massacre as Aigas comes in. There's some forces on the south side, too, but all the Hellbats are going to get dropped on top of him as well. It's like, what are you going to do?
I mean, you can push into the conal fire of those Hellbats while enduring the hell on earth that is those tanks, or you can turn around and, I guess, counterattack. But the time he gave up means that there's already another force over there.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, what are you going to counter drop into? Good luck, have fun.
That army's already bigger. He's going to go for the top of the ramp. This is actually in a really nice spot, but to be honest, I feel like it's too little too late. There's already tanks in here. SCV's going to be dragged just to buy up some time, and here comes the forces of Massa. He's got a massive supply advantage. He's destroyed the third, and I feel like Aigaz, he's traumatic at this point in time.
They tried to run. Nowhere to hide in control as Aigaz's SCVs get cooked up outside this fourth base position.
He's down 100 supply. It's like,
yeah.
Aigaz is just taking a couple of seconds here to catch his breath and be like, whoa, this is too much. Things are sliding out of control.
Yeah, Massa opening up 1-0. Taking a page actually right out of Marine Lords.
Yeah.
It feels like he got slapped so hard by Marine Lord. He's like, you know what? This strategy seems pretty good.
Tanks
I think I'm just going to do
good.
this.
And, you know, so this is where I don't want to make too big of a deal of this because, of course, these are competitive players and we don't know what they're thinking. But at some level, I wonder if Aigaz is a little bit rattled. Like, he went up 1-0, detecting all the cheese of Haz, and then he had 2 games that were, I mean, we laughed, we had a good time. I'm sure you fans had a good time too. But as a player, it can actually mess with your brain. It can really rock you.
Yeah, that's the sort of stuff that you're like just trying to practice, and you play against like a couple of guys that do that to you. That changes your whole mindset for the day. You actually need to just stop playing StarCraft for like an hour or two and just calm down because it just gets your brain so worked up.
And you can't do that here. That's the brutal part because we play the loser match next. He had time to go, use the bathroom, say a few words, and then sit back down and he's playing Massa. And I have to agree with you, Massa. If you guys missed that first match, this is basically what Marine Lord did to him. Like, this army composition is very strong, very good at defending, but also mobile enough with those drop Hellbats to be pretty offensive as well.
Yeah, and it was like this big push right here was the only opportunity that Aigaz had to do something. And I would argue...
You think going into the third?
Yeah, I think he should have split some units off to the third base, because if he kills all the SCVs there and these workers in the natural, then he might actually cripple Massa enough to the point where he can really do something. But at the same time, you know, as casters, you have to keep in mind, maybe he wouldn't have gotten so far into the main if he hadn't brought all of his forces.
Yeah, so I mean, we're looking at this, we're being critical, guys, but, you know, like Nathaniel's just said, to be honest, if you get on top of production and you can kind of establish that position, you win the game. The guy can have 17 bases. If he can't make an army, you will win from that point forward. But as we could see here, his tanks were on low health, his medevacs were dwindling. I just never thought he had the ability to get up there and hold that position. So in retrospect, going for the third, shutting it down, and then maybe containing him with those tanks might have been the better choice.
Yeah, there's so many ways that you can do it, but in this position, maybe he would just thought he was so far behind, he needed to keep extending further, which obviously didn't work out very well for him. As we are loaded into map number 2, and in the blue, representing Root Gaming, we have Massa in the bottom left, currently up 1-0, a map away from. Do we want to say it? Who do you think's actually going to win between Marine Lord and Haas?
On paper, you gotta say it should be Haas. It should Marine Lord should see that first series and be like, okay, scout. I need to scout, and just when I think I found the cheese, know that it's not actually done yet.
Yeah. So we think that the winner of this series could have a rematch against Haas, just with how good Marine Lord is. But this guy probably wouldn't want to play against him again. Of course, he is Aigaz, also from Root Gaming.
Well, he does want to play. I mean, I get your point. But
do you want to play, or you're like, because he's in your head, though.
He is, but that would mean he's won this match. So I'm telling you right now, Aigaz would welcome the opportunity to face that nightmare that is Haz, assuming Aigaz can get past this, and assuming Haz doesn't pull the same tomfoolery to the same success against Marine Lord.
Yeah. Well, that, I think, is really going to shake this group up if Haz beats Marine Lord.
If Haz just blows this group 2-0, it's like, what? I mean, more power to him.
Yeah, I just imagine that like Marine Lord's like looking up VODs right now. He has like Maximus Black's channel open. He has like this printf guy who just can't rush his game. He's like all these people's channels open, looking at their VODs.
Artur.
He's like, I need to see. He's like, I need the culmination of all this knowledge to hit me at once. When in reality, he could just ask any NA Terran. He's like, please, just tell me what Protoss do to you.
Well, I mean, that's what makes Haz so special, though. It's like we all get those cheeses, but it's the fact that he follows it up with like the next best cheese in that situation. It's crazy. And I was losing faith. In that first game, it looked silly. Like, Aigaz was scouting absolutely every single proxy pylon. He scouted each and every tech. He was seeing the lack of expansion, the addition. I mean, he handled that really, really well. So I was like, okay, Haz, you've been figured out. It doesn't work in this modern era against these these Terran players. But I'll tell you what, like the guys were talking about, he's like top 30 or 40 on the Korean ladder, where the best Terrans play, by the way, like the absolute best Terran players. Oh, man. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, you got to consider like with the number of ladder games that all those players play, practicing, 10+ hours a day in Korea. The odds are actually pretty high that Haas has probably cheesed out almost every Terran in Korea, at least at one point or another. Flash will just like wake up first game of the day. He's like, oh, some barcode Protoss. There's a gateway in my base. I wasn't ready for this. It's must happen to everyone at least once.
Maybe that's why he's so calm. Every time they show his face, he's been yelled at with like multilingual obscenities and the worst things that people could say, and he's just like, I've seen it all. It's fine.
He shows up at the PC Bong for like the offline little mini tournament. And everyone just sits there shouting at him the whole time.
I cannot wait for Haas in Legacy of the Void. Adepts, Void Rays, and Oracles in that guy's hands. Doesn't that just make you feel warm and fuzzy inside, Nathanius? Getting excited about that?
Just playing a little bit of that, we've already seen so much of the crazy, Howda people have been busting out in Legacy of the Void. And I gotta tell you, that in Haas's hands makes me very scared.
It's gonna be scary.
You proxy Tempest someone, and then your Tempest clicks on a unit, and it's actually guaranteed to die. It's like, yes, this is actually pretty awesome.
Well, we'll see where it goes, guys. But for right now, build order-wise, we do have Cloaked Banshee coming out from Aigaz. He pulls up here for the first time, sees 5 Marines. Do you know anything that's going on when you see 5 Marines, or is that something that could be anything?
You could then you just probably went up straight to a starport, since relatively speaking, your starport would be finishing around this time normally, around like 5 minutes or so if you went gas first. So that's basically just you've been building Marines nonstop. So you probably built the add-on with your factory or something, probably a starport play. Nothing really, not too much to be let go here.
And Masa is he is in good position here. He's going to actually open up Raven first, which is not a particularly common thing to do. But if you're knowing, what you're hoping to catch with this, of course, is a Cloak Banshee opening. And that's exactly what he's facing. Now, Aigaz is not going to invest too much into this, so that's the good news if you are an Aigaz fan. He is following this up with a Raven himself, so it's not going to be continuous. If he came out with like 2 Banshees and just got fed into the wood chipper that is a couple of Vikings and a Raven, it'd be so bad for him.
Yeah, Aigaz's Banshee's going to move in now. There's a it's very cute and adorable Widow Mine placement, but
it could get on the way out, dude.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point.
That would be bad.
But the Banshee's going to come in, gets an SCV, steps up. Okay, there's the Raven, there are the Marines. Immediately turns around. This is the ideal scenario for Masa. He didn't want to build all those missile turrets for a reason. Oh, he does go buy it. Jeff, you cursed him. Oh, he's barely lives though.
What is its health?
Must have like
3
hit points. One more Marine shot.
One more Marine shot.
That's Jimmy Rustler right there.
Well, to be honest, in this game, I am an Aigaz fan. The guy has had a rough last 3 games, so I'm like, you know what, buddy? If your 3 health Cloak Banshee makes it back home to do something else later, I am okay with it. I'm a fan of bigger epic series. A little bit of a supply block. That'll happen, though. But we do see that the progression of builds for both these players is starting to take shape. Masa, however, well, actually, he's falling up with his own kind of late cloak.
Yeah, to me, this says either he's going to build No, he already has a Raven, so I'm thinking he's actually going to go for Bio with that barracks. Otherwise, I don't know what he's going to do with the second tech lab, unless he really wants to keep building Banshees and then go into siege tanks. No, I guess he does. And that actually, so this actually could still be mech.
This is like the 1-1-1 style of old.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that he's still going to keep using his starport like this. Like, delayed Banshees usually only work for some players, like, I think about, like, Bunny, because your opponents usually don't expect it, and you hit with 2 at once. But,
or particularly, like, delayed Banshees after expanding is what I find.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what he's... No, that's Masa actually down here.
Yeah, that's what Masa's done, and Aigaz probably wouldn't be expecting it. I mean, look at what he has set up at home. There's no turrets or anything like that.
Kudos to him, though, for making that Raven in particular. And the Raven's going to actually serve pretty nicely here.
Yep.
This Banshee is intercepted, though, on the lower right-hand side. And again, cloak all you want. There's a Raven right there. But actually, he's not really noticing. It's going to make its way in here.
Missile turret, too, though. Oh, the missile turret! Wrecked. That's unfortunate. Well, his Banshee survived originally and now pays the iron price.
Yeah, unfortunately, it does. Both players Banshee harassing each other, but not too tremendous effect. You do want to keep those Banshees alive, though. They're fantastic spotters for like your siege tanks later. Of course, this is their primary role. You want to make a Cloaked Banshee with the intention of killing 10 SCVs or something like that.
That surgical precision strike unit. That's what the Banshee is, Banshee's your stealth bomber that just runs in, gets a little done, gets out.
Oh, he moved the Widow Mine.
I think Masa's is still inside Aigaz's mineral line, too. No turrets. That's unfortunate. Ravens are nice, but they're pretty slow.
will end up dying here. Harvester count, though, is going to be in favor of Masa once again.
Yeah.
Although closer. It's just 7 this time.
But for 7, 8 SCVs and then that Banshee coming in on the right
Yeah.
side, like really abusing the fact that there's just a Raven for detection.
Yeah.
This is ideal. Like Masa's got to be happy with this.
It's making kind of, I mean, when you make that Raven, your hope is that you're skimping on missile turrets. You're like, well, this is going to be the poor man's missile turret, essentially.
Yeah.
But as you said, with the 2 Banshees kind of ebbing and flowing out of
That's
either
the whole
side of the
point.
base.
Yeah, exactly. Like you made a really good point. Like you only have that one Banshee. You know, there should be the one Raven. The Raven moves slower than any of the other air units that Terran has. Like, good luck catching up.
Yep, and trying to capitalize an army advantage here is Aigaz. He's going to move in. He's down 8 Harvesters. So again, it's kind of one of those situations where it's like, this is not nearly as all-in as last game as we saw. Like, he has to do massive damage right now. But certainly, if you leverage a stronger army and you just run into 3 or 4 siege tanks and you have no answer for him, you will be in a lot of trouble. But he's going to... I like this positioning, actually. There's no tank there. Drops the PDD immediately. And it's going to start to actually edge out an advantage here for this air battle as well.
I love that they brought the Banshees forward, too, because those will also use the point defense drone's energy up so they can deplete it even faster. Really nice. Actually, this is a great position for Aigaz to take.
Yeah, he's in a fantastic position. And from here, he can siege the gas. Not really reaching the minerals, but actually the gas is really good at this stage. Both players wanting to utilize it. Oh, he's getting the tank?
Oh, that's really, really big. Aigaz is finally getting some sort of a break here in this group.
Yeah, he's finally struck gold. Now winning the battle in the air, by the way, and with that Banshee again spotting for him as kind of the aggressive front. Now he is challenging the mineral line. And what are you going to do? Send Marines down there? No sirree, Bob.
This is really bad, actually, because those siege tanks are in an untouchable location. And if you pull SCVs against this, there's enough Marines to kill all of this, like, easily.
It would get bad. He's going to try to hope to win the air battle. There's a nice scan. He needs to kill the Banshee. Doesn't quite get it. That one escapes with very little health as well. And in doing so, tips the scales in favor of, again, the Vikings of Aigaz, who's going to win the air battle by 2.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you built a 3rd command center? That's adorable. I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, and that is the risk in any mirror matchup. But in TvT, we see this as well. Like, positioning so strong. Look at where those tanks are. It's so hard to push into that for all the reasons that Dan's was talking about. And then from here, we're seeing, oh, wow, the Banshee actually flanking, getting 1 tank, going on for 2. Yep, not a bad move. Getting back into it a little bit.
I mean, it's something, but that's not
actually
hasn't. That's not going to pull you out from 6 feet under in control.
Oh, that's a good start, though. That would have might hit like a handful of Marines and all 3 of the Vikings. So a little bit more luck like that, and Mask can claw his way back in. But to your point, he's like repairing his command center to not lose it. Anytime you're doing that, you're living on borrowed time.
Yeah, you know that you're fishing at the bottom of the barrel. That's not a fun place to be. And he can't even afford to turn his 3rd orbital into an orbital.
Well, he's got to find the money for that soon. I mean, it's just literally a dead weight sitting there right now.
Yep, and as long as the Viking count favors him, like the Banshee going back across the map actually did get quite a bit done, delaying the command center, picking off some of the reinforcements. But you need to get your air control back. Finally managing to pick off the Raven. Finally.
And without spotting, he can start to try and dislodge this position. I mean, it's really... The air battle was the key here. You'll notice that tank's not shooting, and now he's getting just edging forward here as well. It takes scans for Aigaz to do the same thing, but because he's behind a shot or 2, he'll lose that battle as well.
Yep. Very, very nice, actually. Masa manages to push him off of him, and he can get his orbital command done now. And he'll actually have that mule advantage temporarily. Yeah. I mean, the command center's on the way for Aigaz, but, you know, far shot from being turned into an orbital. And these Marines have stim.
Running this down would be nice, and I think he will. I believe he'll at least harass us and probably get all the Marines as well.
Yeah,
okay, he's going to respect it. Backs up.
I like this, though. You know, this could have been so much worse. Like, this is one of those positions where as much damage as we can clearly see Aigaz did to Masa, that is a scenario where a lot of Terran players, if you're on ladder, you're going to lose that game. You know, it is so hard to control and get everything going properly where you can keep this game back. And Masa's behind on supply a little bit, sure, but we also have to keep in mind that he definitely had the advantage prior to that push being made.
Your point is brilliant. Like, he's down 6 Harvesters and 7 army supply. I thought that game was absolutely over. His orbital command center was like 100 health away from just dying. He was down. He was feeding Vikings into a superior position. It was looking very bad.
Yeah.
And for him to be, I don't know, 1 Hellion run by away, a favorable, a couple of medevacs running into some Widow Mines or missile turrets, all of a sudden, it's not even that they're tied. It's that Masa might consider himself ahead. But I do like this move from Aigaz. Take the 3rd, build on your slight advantage, saturate it immediately, and at least push your advantage a little bit more.
Yeah. At this point for Masa, the key goal after all that damage was taken is to just situate this third and build your supply. I guess, like, okay, these Vikings are cute, all being defensive, what have you. Masa's not going to do a doom drop. That's not how mech works, right? He wants to play it slow. Masa wants to take it slow, keep this game in his control.
There we go. Yeah. He's going to try to torch it up over here on the right side. But actually, Aigaz knows about this, and it's just kind of parked there. He has a tank anchoring the position. I like this wall in, by the way, because, again, we kind of touched on this. One of the ways that he could leave up this lead is a couple of Hellions running over there and torching up a mineral line. And it's worth noting, by the way, that it does seem that Aigaz is going to be going bio. So that's Marine Marauder, medevac, that kind of stuff. Tank support, of course, very traditional in TVT. And then Masa is going to go the mechanized route. That's going to be your Thors, your tanks, your Hellbats. Some of that stuff we saw from, well, actually Masa last game, but also Marine Lord before that.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you can, of course, play Terran versus Terran, but if it was a delicious sandwich, no matter what you want to put in it, you need some sort of bread to hold it together. Those are your siege tanks in control.
But I like your analogy because also there's so many different kinds of awesome sandwiches, and that's actually kind of cool in TVT. We see a pretty decent variety. It is usually centric around Marine Marauder, medevac tank, or mech, but we've seen Sky Terran. Ravens come in and out. It's cool. The opening's different.
Your Vikings and your tanks are the staple, but there's a lot you can fit around them. They don't usually make up everything.
We're gonna have a little bit of kind of almost an accidental air battle here. Now, both players don't have that Raven. The PDD is so strong in this, but having a tech lab on the starport seems to be way more taxing. You would rather have the reactor so you can get out more Vikings, more medevacs.
And, the funny thing is, they both have Banshees with this force, so whoever wins this air fight does actually have that positional play where they can just abuse the other guy. Now, Masa does have a Thor coming out, so it's not quite so bad anymore.
Yeah, we get short up here a little bit. But Masa, we saw in that last game, he wants to be, even with mech, which is slower but hits harder, he kind of wants to be the aggressor. He would always defend the attacks and then push out and end the game around his aggression is typically what we're seeing from him. There's some players who do the mechanized style and never attack. That's their mantra. They're like, no, I'll absorb all of your attacks and I'll just expand around the map until you've gotten the memo that you're just kind of done attacking. But it's Masa in this game that has been held back and defending, and he's about ready to muscle up and push out, it would appear.
Yep, this is a big opportunity for him now. He's got a very large army, and we also have to consider that Aigaz is making a switch into a very powerful capital ship army composition. He's going for battle cruisers.
I'm a fan. And he's actually already got 2 approaching 50%. They're going to be quite strong here. They have we're going to have a huge fight here in just a second. Actually, a very awkward position for Masa. He's kind of wrapped around that corner. The Viking battle going heavily in favor of Aigaz. So that's allowing his Banshees to deal one-way damage. I don't see a Thor. I don't see Vikings. This is so bad.
Yeah, the one Thor on the map for Masa gets cleaned up. That means that Banshee can just attack. And now the tanks are on siege. The Bio is going to chase Masa's army. Keep in mind, he lost all of his Vikings in control, which means there's nothing that can actually kill the battle cruisers either.
I mean, the last thing on Masa's mind right now has to be... I mean, he just lost the Viking battle. He's actually making 3 more. I was about to say he's got to be like, okay, well, I can't deal with that. But to be honest, no, he needs to come up with answers. He's about to find out there's battle cruisers. That's going to be the really bad news. But even just 1 or 2 Banshees can swing a battle in favor of the guy that's got the Banshees.
Yeah. And we see a little Hellion run by coming in here. Actually, a lot of fresh mining workers here. 4 fresh mules getting knocked down. That's actually a pretty big victory. It's going to really slow down Aigaz's income. But he still doesn't know that there's battle cruisers on the map. Yeah. He doesn't know.
He does not know. And that's going to be the big reveal. But that's the moment. I mean, upgraded mech with blue flame getting in on those SCVs that have no defense is just a nightmare. And in that one fell swoop, all of a sudden he's actually up 3 harvesters. But as you said, here comes the bad news.
Now he knows. And the thing is, as cool as all those tanks are and all those Hellions are, they don't shoot up. So with the air control being in Aigaz's favor, there is nothing he can do about these battle cruisers. They are too powerful for the Thor's guns to actually kill on their own.
He's got some time to think about it, though, because it is just the 2 for right now. He's got a couple of missile turrets anchoring those tanks, so his time to kind of develop is happening. We see another starport being added. He's already making 3 at a time. And actually, this planetary going down as quickly as that it's starting to look really bad.
Yeah, and now we even have Yamato cannon being researched, which means Aigaz will have a very long-range artillery shot out of those battle cruisers that makes them even more powerful, enough to one-shot pretty much anything he has except that Thor, and even then it's still very close to dying after that.
You know, Masa's got to try something. He knows he's way behind. He just lost the base essentially for free. So he's going to move forward and try to challenge this base. And at a glance, this looks to be, it's like, well, what are you going to do? I mean, anything lands over there, any bio, you're just in trouble. But he's got to try something. So he's going to push out there. That position on the high ground is really, really strong. But again, without the support, I feel like it's just throwing units into the wind. Okay, now with Hellions, it looks a lot better.
And he really needs this Thor to actually pitch into these Viking fights, as he needs every little bit of damage he can get in anti-air right now. Like this battlecruiser coming here to defend, it's like, okay, it's cool that Jet tanks and Hellions. Battlecruiser will, battlecruiser's like, move along.
He'll clean it up. The Thor count a little bit higher. There's 2 over there right now. But look at this from Aigez. I love this. It's not even so much that he has battlecruisers, and what those battlecruisers can do is, of course, win the straight-up fight. But he's used them to just earn position for the single tank to all of a sudden start shelling into the gas, and hopefully in a few seconds here, even into the mineral line itself.
Yeah, there's not that many Marines with this force, but even then, you know, moving those Vikings closer and closer, trying to get those shots off on the opposing Vikings, as nice as it is, you know, Aigez has the money. He's got the income. He's on 4 bases. We have Masa just kind of barely mining this third right now.
Nice little pushback here from Masa, though. He's down 40 supply, so guys, he's the guy that's getting mopped, you know, with the floor right now. He's bleeding from the face and every other part of his body, but he's still got a little bit of fight in him. He's got these Vikings that do outnumber the Vikings of his opponent. He's working on the one Battlecruiser. One goes down almost immediately. The shorter range Battlecruiser has a tough time with him, and the second one dies as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you kill the Battlecruisers, the mech army can handle these ground forces. He's getting quite a bit of work done, but the Battlecruiser still has that Yamato cannon. That's what we see, blowing into smithereens that Thor. It's like, what are you going to do now?
And you know what? And he pushed as far as he could, but now he's actually behind in Vikings. He's lost all his Thors, and it's long enough into the game where all of a sudden you do start saying 45 harvesters between 3 or 4 bases that are getting mined out. You're on borrowed time. Like, he tried this little tank push up there, got pushed away by a single battlecruiser for the most part, and all of a sudden he's having a tough time holding onto these bases and coming up with the composition to answer these very few battlecruisers, by the way. It's not like it's 12 or something. It's like 2 at a time.
Yeah, all he needs is to just get enough Vikings to knock him down, and that's the problem, is that he hasn't had any time to sit back and just build up, and that's
this should do it.
The mark of a good player. GG Aigez ties the series up 1-1. Got to be feeling good after that. He's had a pretty rough day.
And he should let himself feel good. he's got to breathe and be like, okay, the world's returning to normalcy on some level. Like, everything in that game was pretty normal. I was okay. I can do this. And now we go into Game 3 of this elimination match. So, I mean, you know, Masa looked amazing, smoked Aigez in Game number 1, coming back off that tough loss to Marine Lord, who did the same to him. And now both these guys are in the same position. It's like, hey, I don't feel like either one of these two guys has shown us their real top-level play just yet, but the time for that is kind of coming to an end.
Yeah, this is where all the momentum started to build up for Aigez. This tank push was so nice, really using what the map gives you on Cactus Valley.
Yeah.
Normally, if you just put a tank like that very close, you can always try to bum rush it or what have you, but this position is just, you have to run so far around to actually get there, and even then he has the Widow Mine there to lock it down. If you try to push into that, you know, you're throwing yourself into a blender.
And this was really good, and I feel like this is where the beginning of the end, as far away as it came, I mean, the game went on for another 20 minutes. This is where it kind of started. Really well done by Aigez, but I also kind of want to highlight Masa. Like you said, this is a very kind of subtle point, but a good one. A lot of people at this point in time, they're not mining off of one of their gases. They lost all their Vikings. They only have a single tank. It's like, all right, good game. Let's get into game number, you know, let's get into game number 3. This is over. Like, I'm dead. But Masa made it a game after that. And honestly, if not for the Battlecruiser tech switch, he was geared to hold on to 3 or 4 bases and perhaps have a chance to close it out 2-0.
It's not like he was in a bad position. I think if he had scanned and saw the fusion core while that big push was hitting him, he would have realized, like, I actually probably stop building Hellions, invest all my minerals into a bunch of turrets, and then I don't need as many Vikings, and just keep my tanks wrapped very tightly around said missile turrets. Even then, it's still quite difficult. I think Cactus Valley favors that bio play a little bit more, just because you can move to those positions that we talked about a little bit faster than a mech player can.
Well, now Nathanias, we move on to Coda. This is, of course, the staple map. We've seen this a lot. But is there anything in TVT, any kind of points of concerns we should be looking at, anything that these players will key in on?
You've got a pretty similar siege push that you can make on the third base on this map, because you have that 2 entrances, that big ramp on the west side if you're in the south spawn, or I guess, you know, on the east side if you're in the north spawn. but there's also the cliff that a Reaper can go up in the main base at the beginning. Not so much worried about cheese as I am using that to elevator pushes up for perhaps a fast Hellion Marine play or maybe another tank push.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious, actually, if we'll see a little bit more of that. There are a lot of timing attacks designated to hit and do critical damage in the early game of TVT in particular.
We haven't seen those.
No. And I'm not even talking all-ins, guys. I'm saying, like, just kind of a leveraged timing attack. We've seen Hellion pushes, a couple of Marines dabbled in there, but for the most part, that's like feeler-out strategy as opposed to a timing attack.
Yeah, there's a period of time where those builds, I guess Roddy and I were talking about it earlier, where you get like gas first, Marine Hellion, Medevac, push, and it would come really fast. We have not had anything quite like that today so far, but this map will decide who is knocked out of the World Championship Series Premier League here in the round of 32 in the Northwest. We have Root Gaming's Masa having to play against his teammate again. The second Root team kill that we'll have had in, what, 24 hours.
Yeah.
Could probably even tighten that window a bit. His teammate, of course, being Aegis, also from Root.
It's unfortunate, but like I said earlier, I mean, congratulations to Katz, the owner and manager of that organization, and everybody else. They do have the most players in WCS Premier League from a single team, and that's pretty cool feat. It really, really is, especially since, you know, for the most part, a lot of those, and actually, by the way, they're defending champion. Hydra is a Root player. No small feat there. He's like the absolute most... I think everyone can pretty much agree he is the most dominant player in this WCS as well. Like, he is the favorite. If this were Vegas or something like that, he would be like a pretty heavy favorite to win this season even here in the round of 32. He's already in the round of 16, but it's like, yeah, he's going to win it.
Yeah, Season 2, he was pretty much unstoppable. Season 1, Hydra was pretty much unstoppable until that final Game 7 of the Grand Finals. And
Great series.
It's like, can you really say that he wasn't, you know, basically like an inch from that title? Like, no, he was there. He was on the precipice, and it was Polt to take advantage of the position that he was in to finish the job. But Hydra has been so close, and just another. It's a great WCS has been great this year for Root.
Yeah.
The combined income of Root players from WCS must be like some really sick number.
It's doing great, and for those pro gamers, that is what a time to be alive, as some would say, because it's awesome to be able to count on such a fantastic league where there's great competition, there's great viewership. You guys at home, thank you so much for tuning in. Even the people here in the studio, welcome. It's so cool. And then these pro gamers are getting supported, and they're flown around. I mean, we're going to go to Poland. Actually, excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to go to Germany for the second half of WCS and see some more great competition. I'm really excited to see how, like, Newt does. Or Snoot. Sorry, I actually watched the Alien movie recently. So or Aliens. Anyways, I'm melting to pieces, but there's so much good StarCraft out there.
There is a lot to come, for sure.
And here you go, Nathaniel. You talked about the Reaper being strong in this map. And both players did opt for it, but you can see the respect for the Reaper too, because you don't want to lose that Reaper, because both players are kind of like, oh, wait a second. We're adding on things. We don't have our factory just yet. Like, give me a second, and then I'll be a little bit more aggressive with that Reaper.
Yeah, you really think about it, this opening from Masa, very similar to what he did against Marine Lord in the first series of the day, trying to get up a little ramped up production. We do have the command center behind it, but he's going up to 3 Reapers when he's probably going to mix in another Hellion as soon as he can afford it. And what he's looking for is a place where he can apply pressure and really build some momentum. Rook, right here. 2 versus 1. Not a fun spot to be.
He missed the opportunity to stutter step forward, though. I felt like if he would have done that, this is a dead Reaper.
Yeah, and then these 2 Marines are also going to be wrecked.
In trouble. Can't lose his own Reaper, though. And the third one coming in.
The Hellion's coming in, though. This just does change things. That Reaper is so low regenerating. The Hellion tags him at the end, and now the Reapers can come in and help finish off this Marine. Suddenly, Aegis is sweating it.
Good for him, though, for building the command center on the high ground. Imagine if that command center was on the low ground, the SCV dies, and he can't get down there. We're talking like a 2-minute delay on his own orbital command, which is huge in a TVT.
Yeah, that would actually be really, really terrifying. We have the next Reaper and Hellion coming across the map. Moss has one last opportunity. If he can make some magic happen, this would be the time, but
no, that's too much.
Does not seem like it will happen.
No, I don't want to make too big of a deal of this, because obviously this was leveraged to... I mean, if there's a low ground CC there, it's all but over. But with the 3 Reapers now, what do they do? They scout around. They don't really add much later, do they?
You have, like, this little bit of map presence. Like, obviously a couple Hellions are still going to be able to handle it at some point or another. But Aegis actually hasn't really focused that much on Hellions this game. So I think he'll be able to hold this tower until there's, like, some unassailable number, but he could always throw the 3 in later, try to pick off some units, and maybe get a bit of scouting. I think he did what he intended to do. He trimmed the fat and also completely removed the map presence from Aigis by getting rid of his Reapers.
It does become a scary game for Aigis, and we can see that with him opening Raven here. So again, I don't want to make it sound like the Raven is the coward's way out. Like it's like, oh gosh, I'm so far behind, I have to make a Raven. But it does mean that he's going to probably have to look to scan to get an idea of where he's going in this game. And if he doesn't scan, that in and of itself is kind of a leveraged gamble. It's saying, hey, I'm going to be vulnerable to some things. I have no information, as we can see here from Flo, but it's game 3. I need that mule. I think I'm behind, so I'm kind of gambling.
Honestly, now moving down to take this natural, there's no bunker here. It's totally possible if this Reaper baits the army up, he could actually try to move in here. Now, these Marines are spread reasonably well, but if he approaches from the left side and gets a big line shot, he actually could clean up all the forces here in the natural.
And there's nothing, I mean, there's 4 Marines coming in that single Raven. At this point in time, it's going to have to drop down the auto turret. There it goes. And he will push that back, but it was cool. Like, there's a chance for the game again to end right there. But with the auto turret going down, this Raven becomes a giant floating, detector, a missile turret, for something that's... We don't see Cloak Banshees actually coming out. Well, no. I hold my breath.
It's still really
Here
nice,
comes
though. You said it. The energy is the biggest issue there, because we talk about these mid-game engagements where it's like, okay, they both got 2 PDDs.
Yeah.
That might not be possible now for Aigis.
Yeah.
And those are the things that can open up the opportunity for Masa to take some big trades.
Think of it a little bit as kind of like a photon overcharge. Like if you get a Protoss to use it really earlier on,
bait that energy.
It does have an effect later in the game. And here's those Reapers again, making use of what they can. Like they obviously don't serve too much of a point in these fights, but Nathanius has been kind of cool. Like they help jump up that ramp. They put the natural in danger. Here they are. They get a single SCV kill, and a lot of people would say, well, single SCV kill for a Reaper, that was a great trade for Aigis. But actually, these Reapers are pretty much all but done. They don't have much of a role. So if they can get SCV kills, that's great.
Yeah, at this point, you don't really use the Reaper for anything. They're not good in main army compositions. He's not going to build anymore. Just use them all you can, get a little bit of scouting information. There wasn't really too much to see in this matchup that could really surprise you. I mean, if he saw Fusion Core, he'd probably be like, what? But then he'd be like, oh, I can just kill you because you don't have any units now.
Running in on the tank. He's going to try to get the tank here, but they don't have the greatest DPS. So this is actually a little bit of a premature dive. He gets a couple of Marine kills, but for the most part, he just donated 6 Hellions to the Aigis Fund.
That was pretty overzealous. If the auto turret wasn't there, then maybe, but well, I guess it also baits for the Banshee. Perhaps we're wrong.
Okay, winning some position here, occupying the attention. That's going to be a couple of kills. He needs to not lose the Banshee, but he will, in fact, with that Viking and the combined fire from the Marines. Harvester count still in favor of Masa. Well, actually, maybe 1 in favor there.
I'm really not sure how I feel about this just yet. It's a pretty... Last trade was interesting. Like, he threw away a lot of Hellions. He got some SCVs. Lost the Banshee. Like, if there weren't any Hellions lost, like 6 SCVs for a Banshee is not the end of the world. But other things to consider that we do have the 3rd Command Center finishing up for Masa.
Yeah.
Very nice for him. I do not believe Aigis has even started a 3rd Command Center, which means we're going to see another big 2-base push from him.
Yeah.
Very similar to what we saw the last map.
And what a perilous place to be, because honestly, like, those pushes... This is a map where there's multiple angles where you can threaten both the natural and 3rd, so it's less about what I'm about to say. But like, if you get into a position and you run into like just 3 tanks, and you have, even if you have the bigger army, but those tanks are holding that position, running into it can trade unfavorably for you, and all of a sudden that advantage you had is gone. We saw that in game number 1 pretty strongly. But again, on this map, if Masa does take that 3rd, there's several places to apply pressure there, and if you get overzealous about defending the 3rd, all of a sudden it can open up your natural. So there are points of concern here.
Yeah. And now Masa wants to take that 3rd base immediately. It's kind of funny, though. As a mech player, you're usually the one that's going to be playing a little bit more cautiously. Yeah. This big push could very well win the game for Aigis if Masa commits too much to defending. But look at this. Just things like this, like, oh, those Marines and Marauders are going to be a little bit more delayed from moving out. That's actually what he needs, to buy as much time as possible and keep Aigis afraid that if he leaves, all those Hellions will dive into his base and kill him.
And he is afraid. And of course, as we can see, the Hellions are heading back because that is actually the majority of the army for Masa. He needs those guys back at home. But he's going to circle back around, try to maybe take a poke at the tower. And in doing so, he'll see the army. It was originally going to head up here kind of towards the right where those destructible rocks can be brought down, and then towards the 3rd. But it looks like he might actually head in here. And in doing so, okay, there's the PDD. And this PDD in this position, Nathanius?
It's good bait.
Who cares?
Yeah.
You can defend that spot. I don't care. You need to get closer to me.
Yeah, and now he has both that he can utilize here. And pushing into this position also blocks the Marauder shot, so the Hellbats get up close and personal with these Marines, clearing out a lot of them. The Vikings are going to land, but there's too many siege tanks here. Now the Vikings are going to land for Masa as he counter trades into this. The splash damage too strong from both sides, but if one could break the other, it would be game. Still important to note, it's okay for Masa to have less stuff left over because he's got a third base.
This is kind of what I was talking about. Like that on paper was a win for Aigez in terms of trade. Like he did a really good job, I think, killing more. It was actually, in fact, maybe I'll have to take back what I said. But to your point, by not winning that fight overwhelmingly, all of a sudden Masa is like, well, these 3 tanks become gods. You can't get anywhere near them.
He needed to clean house on that one, you know. And it's, like you said, it was a good trade for sure. But if you have a third base, you have more money, you can afford to take bad trades. All you need to do is not die, and you're going to win because you have more money.
And Masa sniffs even this out too, really timely on this scout. And all of a sudden, just like 1 or 2 tanks up there become really hard to dislodge. He's going to go for it anyways, because he has to. Keep in mind, again, the orbital is just now being made, or command center, excuse me, for Aigez back at home. Does kill that forward tank, so there's a chance here for him to pull up here, but also be wary. Every time he unsieges tanks, because we're in like kind of like a small army fight here, he doesn't have a lot to support him.
No, then that's a very important thing to keep in mind, as he actually cannot hit these Marauders on the other side of his mineral line.
Really nice.
Aigez is just trying to spread him out as much as he can, because that's when Bio can become very useful, when those tanks aren't all able to fire together and blow your army to smithereens.
Inching forward does Aigez. He's going to get access to a couple of those mineral piles, which SCVs will trickle on over to. He's also going to drop in the main here as well.
Yeah, really important to point that out in control. There's a couple of missile turrets here, but this drop will unload. We have a tank sieging up in the main mineral line.
Nicely done.
Yeah, this is actually really good play by Aigez. He's starting to swing things back in a little bit of momentum, denying the right side gas on that third. He could even try to push that command center back further, but denying the gas in the main base. Like, this is actually exactly what Aigez wants. And he also killed the missile turret, which means he can escape.
He can escape if he wants to. He's occupying a lot of attention. He's going to actually get away, and the anti-air is lagging behind. The third is dislodged. By the way, in the midst of this, Aigez has taken his own third. It's not quite saturated just yet. Actually at all.
It's just kind of there.
It will eventually. So he's kind of won for himself the potential to have equal economy, but look at those supplies. Up now 20 is Aigez. And the majority of that, by the way, actually all of that, because they're dead even in workers, is an army.
Yeah,
oh,
Masa's
gosh.
even supply block. I mean, these 2 medevacs are very weak. We had so many dead full medevacs in WCS this week.
And Masa is ready for this. So he jumps in there, and just a single tank and a couple of ill-health Marauders not going to do it. This is the kind of thing where it's like, well, hang on now. All of a sudden, their supply is shifting more forward. I still do like Aigez's position. He's dislodged that third. And this is kind of a cute move from Masa. He's like, okay, fine, you can have that one for now.
Like, screw it, I'll go somewhere else.
I'll go elsewhere. That's the benefit of floating buildings.
Yeah, so he might try to catch this army on the retreat.
Yeah.
Yeah, this, you know, if these forces sequestered like this, as long as there's no reinforcement line, drops the PDD preemptively, the Marauder shots are going to get blocked a little bit, drops the Hellbats on top of the tanks, and he knows if he kills these tanks, he can just keep inching his own forward.
I think he misplayed this, though. He dropped the PDD, like, pretty shallow, and he left his tank sieged in the background.
Oh, no, he could be setting himself up to get sandwiched here. There's the scan. He sees the opportunity. His army's going to come from the right side. His army's going to come from the south side, and these siege tanks have too much to fire at. Aigez cleans up this army.
Holy cow, the hunter becomes the hunted, and they're going to stem forward. There's just 2 tanks. Oh, no, there's the tanks on the high ground. I got a little bit concerned there for a second. He's going to get another tank for himself, but he does overextend and start to lose all these units. On the right side, he's pushing into those 2 tanks. Actually, that got pretty... Well, he does kill them.
They're both going away
trade back and
so
forth.
much at this point. But we have to consider now they're both still mining those third bases, and that's... I actually just need to take stock here.
It's getting bloody.
Yeah, this game is actually getting really gruesome. Pretty nice worker lead for Aigez. He does need the mineral income more than Masa. Masa's more concerned about having gas, so he can keep building tanks. But the thing is, those bioforces, they build so much faster that Aigez can still continue to stretch him out, and Masa has not reached that critical 160 supply where he is a safe, happy boy.
But also critical mass of tanks. Like, you reach a certain point, it's like, okay, the bioforce just flat out cannot engage you, but because they've been trading out tanks and bio units, the tank counts remain fairly low. It's like in the low, 4, 5, 6 area. With those being spread out and moving between bases trying to defend positions,
yeah, this is great. And he goes in for another huge drop inside the main base, and he just continues to say, you do not have enough You cannot cover everything at once. Kills that command center, resources going down the drain for Masa, and suddenly it looks like Aigaz is creating a position where he could actually move on to the final round of this group. Now, the forces are going to continue to come out. These medevacs are really nice. It's like neither of these armies can actually kill the other. He's trying to drop these Hellbats onto the Marauders, but he's still getting so much work done because as nice as it is to not die, you do need to be increasing the tank count, and that is not what's happening for Masa.
It's not happening. They're dying as they come out, and he's just not able to get up there because he's so afraid of these medevac Marauders. Aigaz doing a nice job kind of spreading them out and just being as annoying as possible. Now a Viking comes out, finally, and it's like, get out of here, medevacs. You're so annoying. But in doing this, again, keep an eye on that background. Aigaz is not only dealing damage here, he's growing. He's taking a 4th base. He's adding additional infrastructure behind this. And as you said earlier, Bio is able to be replaced so quickly. He already has an army that is probably stronger than anything you can see Masa muscle up with.
Yeah, and now we have Banshees coming into play. So all Aigaz needs to do from this position is take air control, swat this army back, because taking air control also eliminates the threat of these medevacs that have Hellbats loaded inside of them. And if he wants to, well, there we go, Fusion Core. He can go battle cruisers again.
This is a high-risk move for Masa, but it's the right one. Like, if he just sits back and defends, it's going to be tough.
He will lose.
He's been pushed around so much that all those missile turrets, anything that he's spinning to defend is really expensive. But he leaves behind a couple of tanks here. Actually, it's actually pushing into this.
I mean, defending the tower gives him vision to see this army, but as the army steps forward, like, he just kind of, changed his mind halfway through, and it's
indecision.
like, okay, indecision is going to kill you at this point because now your opponent has that air control, and there's a Banshee here. He can't deal with this.
No, he's at the missile turret, actually. It's gonna, but it's positioning to your point, Nathanius, and if he's sloppy about this, he'll just shed off tanks, and again, that kind of analysis about tank count just continues. Aigaz never sitting still, though. This is so good. This is that really flashy, fast-moving Bio play we were looking from him. If you're defending with Bio, it can be really, really difficult. But if you're the aggressor, if you're the one trimming in, challenging production, getting in on those bases, oftentimes we see that done to great success here.
Yep, and he's going to swing another drop around at his natural.
Completely undefended.
Army still by the 3rd. Nothing here. Yep.
Drops down, and all of a sudden Masa's once again like, okay, I need to send something to go defend that. And the moment he does, he knows there's going to be something coming in on that 3rd.
And just a couple of units trickled at home as well, make it really easy for him to defend against the Hellion Revives, because Hellions don't deal very well against Marauders. He's like, yeah, okay, you'll clean this up. Let's go to a bunch more of your SCVs. You're broke as a joke. You're not mining this gas. Your army's not getting any bigger.
Oh,
and
this is like a weird, bad position, too. Like, not all the Hellions are shooting, so the Marauders are actually kind of trading evenly here. Despite the fact
really
that in an open fight, all 9 of those Hellions would have just torched him in one volley, but this is just so good for Aigaz.
That last Marine. Just like watching him like, no. But like every unit even being like almost over-microed by Aigaz, but he's still spending his money. Yeah. He's still built up this Air Force that there's, you know, an answer to it is developing in the Thors, in the increased Vikings. But you know what that means. There's just less production going into tanks. And here comes
the
battle cruises.
And I really like this because, like, going weirdly ham on Banshees can get hard countered pretty quick. Like, if they're scouted and expected, 5 Thors are going to destroy Banshees. But you start mixing in battle cruisers, you go back to the Ravens, you have the Viking air superiority. It's like, no, you can have as many Thors as you want. At some level with Yamato and just spread out Banshees in our own tanks, your Thors will die. And so will you.
Yep, that's all that matters. He just needs to clean this army up once and it'll be over. Masa has taken so many beatings from this game. Even if he stabilizes, he's got no money in his main. Actually, he doesn't have a main anymore. He has no money in his natural. And his 3rd base is barely saturated. These Banshees are going to be like, well, okay, yeah, you've got some tanks here, great, but you don't have that many.
Let me go ahead and remove those for you.
Let me just erase them from the face of this map.
That's just what this is doing, though. Every time there's something just slightly out of position, it immediately dies. And here we go. I guess going to jump on this position. This 4th base, I think if you're mad, I mean, you might have to defend it just because it's like, well, at some point I have to make a stand somewhere. It does get the battlecruiser there. That's a nice start. His Viking count's been pretty good, by the way. Like, it's somehow superior, and I'm not sure how Aigaz allowed that to happen.
He definitely took control of the air game, but now he's on 2 bases. And when I say 2 bases, I mean his 3rd base, saturated the natural, not quite. There's not that many resources here to mine in the first place, but the other refinery, he doesn't have enough minerals to spend all of his gas. And if you're a mech player that doesn't have enough minerals to spend all of his gas,
you're dying.
Yeah, your units usually cost an exorbitant amount of gas compared to the opposing player, and that's why you need the gas so badly, but he just doesn't have the money for it.
Yeah, the double-edged sword that is mules, like those bases mine out so much quicker that if you don't establish new bases fairly quick, you'll actually just flat out run out of money. But Masa, knowing this, he's going to try to get in there now. He's pushing forward, anchored by these Thors. And I feel like now, by having gone Thors, which is a good answer for air, he doesn't have enough tanks. So it's like this concave of Stim Marauders is going to be so hard to deal with. He's going to get sandwiched. This could be it.
Yeah,
one player should be eliminated here.
He's getting sandwiched, all right. That's a wrap. Aigis stays alive and eliminates Masa from the World Championship Series. Wiping the sweat off his brow, he's like, well, glad I didn't get knocked out like that. After that loss to Haas, he will potentially have a chance to avenge himself.
I mean, good on him. He lost that first game. Masa steamrolled over him and played really, really well. And I was worried. I was like, oh gosh, here we go. But Aigis calmed himself down and went into really strong TVT play, by the way. I felt like every time he was attacking and dropping, there was a few that were really bloody trade-outs. But for the most part, he was the guy that could afford to do that. And, we talked about this, too, in that Game 3. It's like he needs to get some damage in with this attack right now. His entire WCS life was on the line with that, and he did it. He controlled it really well.
It's more impressive, even considering what you just said, that after the end of all the early game aggression, Masa had definitely done more damage in each of those games. Yeah. Like, he got a lot of damage done in Game 1. Obviously, that's okay. That's the one that Masa won. Whatever. Game 2, Cactus Valley. Yeah. He was ahead something like maybe 5, 6, SCVs. The Banshee actually got a lot of work done because it was only the Raven we talked about being able to defend against it. But then the counter push, like he still managed to make the best of a couple pretty awkward situations. And then I think the biggest moment in this last game was the sandwich when he came down that broken rock path. Masa wanted to clean up what was left of the army, failed miserably, and that's what allowed the flank to, and pretty much, in my opinion, end the game.
Yeah, it was a great TVT series, and we had a good time over here. Let's hear from Chobra and the boys at the analyst desk.
Thank you, Nate in control. And yeah, I mean, first of all, of course, even though he's not out of the group yet, congratulations to Aigis finally catching a break here in Group D. He started things off a little bit rough. But in the beginning still, Masa looked good. And as you said before the game, Roddy, you said, well, going into the game, I think it's really 50-50. It's anybody's game. What's your view now in hindsight, having watched that matchup?
I think it was a very close series and a very fun series where you could definitely see two styles kind of clash. Masa being more the, I want to get up to 3 CCs as quick as possible, and Aigis being the, I think if I make a strong attack on 2 bases, I don't have to win immediately, but I should be able to put myself in a good enough position to then eventually take the lead with a much later third base. And I thought it was a very fun series to watch. I think a lot of good plays, like Masa, I was with the boys, like I thought he was super dead and buried in Game 2 during that first big attack. And then that one Banshee kind of bought so much time for himself, and for a split second it almost looked like, is he actually bringing this back? Yeah. But then he took that very awkward fight, which Jeff mentioned as well. It's just like a bunch of tanks around the edge, and it didn't really work out. But I think overall it was a very close back and forth series. But I think in the end, Aigis did deserve the victory.
Yeah, Chris, what are your thoughts now on having seen Aigis' TVT, a little bit more of a standard game? Where do you think he stands today?
I think if he plays TVT, he'll be way better off. You know, the key thing for me was that Aigis was willing to transition. He opens up Bio, but he's always getting those battle cruisers. When we saw Masa play against Marine Lord, he stuck on Bio and just kept, bashing his head up against the wall until he eventually passed out. Where Aigis, he goes Bio, he puts on pressure, and then he kind of transitions into battle cruisers. And when he does that, he puts himself into good shape in the late game.
I see your point there, but I do think it's a little bit unfair to compare the scenarios, because I think Marine Lord's mech is something different, though.
Of course.
Well, I mean, to be fair. But of course, Rotterdam, you were also telling me right before we came back live that you were like, all right, well, I do think Masa doesn't adapt as well. And so on that note, in this match even itself, where Masa did seem to think that, he had his build that he wanted to go with, and he stuck with it. Like you said, Chris, he just went with, well, I wrote this down in my blueprint, that's what I have to run with. Whereas Aigis is constantly thinking, he leaves his options open. Sure, maybe he always went for the battle cruisers, but because it worked. Yes. He was always assessing the situation in this game. As we take a look at a couple of these replays, of course, here in Game 2, Aigis just taking it super patient, being like, well, I've got my battle cruisers, what are you going to do? I'll just slowly starve you out and win the game of attrition in Game 2. Then he goes on to win Game 3. So Aigis still alive, but nothing is yet decided here in this group in terms of who makes it to the round of 16. When we come back from this break, it's going to be the winner's match between Marine Lord and, of course, your favorite, Haas.